أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عبد الله ورسوله أما بعد. We thank the Almighty Allah for giving us another opportunity. We thank Him for His mercies that He's bestowed upon us. We bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except the Almighty Allah. We also bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. Alhamdulillah, today is a Friday, the 12th day of Dhul Hijjah, 1444 years after the Hijrah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It also corresponds with the 30th day of June 2023. And we are still on our book, Matn al-AKHDARI, the compendium of AKHDARI, and we are on the chapter of Tahara, the chapter of cleanliness. But before we enter into today's class, I want us to use this opportunity, to condole with our auntie for the loss of her mother. And we ask the Almighty Allah to forgive her and grant her Jannah. And we ask that whatever she's left behind, may the Almighty Allah safeguard them. Most often than not, it is not the death, but then the issues that come out after death. And we ask the Almighty Allah to safeguard, the community. We ask the Almighty Allah to safeguard the family. MashaAllah, how are you? You good? And Alhamdulillah, we are also in some very important days. The day of Eid was on Wednesday. Today is also the days of Ayyam al-Tashriq, the days of light, as it is called by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, Ayyam al-Tashriq, Ayyam al-Akl wa shurb wa dhikrullah. They are the days of eating and drinking and the days of, supplication to the Almighty Allah. So these are days of dhikr. These are days that we need to remember the Almighty Allah. These are days that we need to go back to the Almighty Allah with a lot of supplication and do a lot of tawbah, because these days are very, very important. And tomorrow is the last of these days. Tomorrow, Saturday, is the 13th day of Shawwal, of Dhul Hijjah, and that is the last day of the rites of Hajj. Tomorrow is officially the last day of the rites of Hajj. Oh, Yusra. You want to be my friend? Okay, good. I know you are just trying to blackmail your mother, I know. So, we are in Faslun fi Tahara. If you have the book, that's page 15. That is the chapter of cleanliness. And the last time we spoke, I said that this is very, very important for us Muslims, because the rulings of cleanliness in Islam is very, very important, because that revolves around our system of ibadah, because our ibadah is built on cleanliness. Without cleanliness, there is no ibadah. And the Sheikh in the book said we have two forms of cleanliness. That is purification from hadath and purification from khabath. When we say purification from hadath, it is the actions that you do that necessitates purification, which is using the washroom. And for you, the mothers, your monthly visitor and then postpartum bleeding. And these are the main things that will cause the need for purification in Islam. So when you use the washroom, and then your monthly visitor and then postpartum bleeding after childbirth. For the men, and also having, conjugal relations with your husband, these things will make you impure, and there's a need for you to do something to rectify that. The other form of purification is taharatu khabath, which is the purification from filth, which is something that comes from outside to your body. So the first one is what you do, and the second one is what comes out from your body to touch you. And these two forms of cleanliness, we're going to speak about them into details. And forgive me if I use, some terminologies or some phrases that normally in our deen we don't use between males and females out of respect. But since this is a classroom, I hope you forgive me if I make some of those statements, because it is for educational purposes. So we said taharatul hadath, things that you do. For example, if you use the washroom, if you defecate or you urinate, then there's a need for cleanliness. If you have conjugal relations with your husband, there's a need for cleanliness. If your monthly visitor comes, there's a need for cleanliness. And then if you have postpartum bleeding, that is bleeding after childbirth, there is a reason for cleanliness. So these are the 5 things that we can enumerate now that will necessitate cleanliness. For the men, it's using the washroom for defecating or for urinating, and then having conjugal relations with their wives, or if they sleep and then they have nocturnal emissions through wet dreams, then there is a necessitation for them to have purification. We all know that menstruation and postpartum bleeding is specific for women, and men do not have those, so there is a specific ruling for women on that. And it is also incumbent on men, for men to know that, because these 2 things come with rulings that bind both men and women, because there are acts that when you are in your monthly visitor's time, you don't engage with your husband. So the men must also know, same way the women must also know. The other form of purification, we said, is something that will come out from outside to touch you. That is any form of filth that will come and touch your body. So urine touches you, which is not yours, or feces touches you, or anything dirty, anything filthy that touches your body or your clothes or the place of ibadah, it's important that you clean it. And these 2 forms of cleanliness is not achieved except with pure and purifying water. When we say pure and purifying water, some water are pure but they are not purifying. What do I mean? If you have a glass of water and then you drop in it, let me say, milkshake into it, or you drop into it, some smoothie, the water is pure because you can drink it. It's not harmful. But then it is not suitable for purification in terms of what? In terms of wudu and what? And ghusl. I hope you get it. The water is pure because when you drink it, it's not harmful. When you have a glass of water and then you pour sugar into it, is it pure or impure? It's pure. Because when you drink it, it's not going to harm you. But then that water is not going to what? It's not going to purify you in terms of using it for the washroom or using it for wudu. So when we say a pure and then a purifying water, that water first and foremost must be pure in itself, and then it should be able to purify. And that's what is the criteria for knowing this water? It is that its color has not changed, its taste has not changed, or its smell has not changed. So in the type of water we're going to use for wudu and ablution or purification, these are the 3 criteria: the color, the taste, and then what? The smell. Someone will say, hey, Yusra, you are starting too early. The color or the criteria. Someone will ask a question that, okay, fine, we are in America, we have tap water flowing. Why do we need to know if the color has changed or what? Because in some parts of the world, people will have to collect water in containers and keep them for days when they are using them. But maybe in this part of the world, it is not like that. But you never know. Since it's part of our deen, you don't know where you find yourself. You don't know, circumstances might change. You don't know, situations might change. And there's the need for you to know this. Even sometimes the tap water, when you open it, there might be some changes in the tap water that you need to be mindful of, because if it's not up to the standard that the deen requires, then it is not suitable for the usage of ibadah. So if the 3 criteria we are looking at when we said the color, the taste, and then the smell, it should be natural. it should be that there's no human activity involved in it. So for example, if you dig a well and then the water comes out salty, you didn't put the salt water, you didn't put salt in there. It is natural. It is also can be used for purification. Sometimes you dig some wells and then the water comes out murky. It is okay. You dig wells and then the water comes out black. It's okay. You dig wells and then the water comes out a little bit chalky or sometimes very sweet. It is natural. So long as the color, the taste, and then the smell of the water is in its natural state without any human interference and any human activity, then that water is suitable for what? For ibadah. I hope we get it. So sea water, for example, since we didn't put the water in this, we didn't put the salt in the sea, then that sea water is what? Is suitable for purification. There is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam where the Sahaba asked him, Ya Rasulullah, we are people who travel by sea, and then we carry with us some water. When we use that water for ablution, we will die out of thirst. Ya Rasulullah, what do you say about using the sea water to perform ablution or purification? And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Tahuru ma'uhu al-hillu maytatuhu." That the sea water is pure for you to use as purification, and then the dead animals in the sea, which are naturally living in the sea, they are okay for you. That is why when you go and get a fish, you don't have to slaughter the fish. You don't have to do, so there's nothing like dhabiha fish. So there's nothing like halal fish. Fish is always halal. I think I saw somewhere in America where they said halal seafood. I couldn't wrap my head around it because there's nothing like halal seafood, because seafood is halal because of the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even though there's a difference of opinion between scholars whereby they're saying, what if you find, a pig in the sea? It's just hypothetical, thinking. We are yet to see a sea pig. So the water must have three qualities: the color, the taste, and then the smell. He said, "Bima yufariquhu ghaliban." That is not normally a part of it. That the thing that will change the water, it shouldn't be something that is normally with the water. So oil was saman, that is fat, was dasam, that is grease, wal wadh was sabun, soap, wal wasakh, that is filth, wa nahwihi, and the likes. You see, these things can change the water dramatically. Soap can change the water dramatically. Fat can change the water dramatically. Grease can change the water dramatically. Filth can change the water dramatically. And what else? Anything that enters into the water can change the water dramatically. You look at it and you see, no, this is no longer water. This is oat milk. There is no water. So long as you can see the effect of the change in the water clearly, that no, this apple cider vinegar that has entered, it has changed the water dramatically, then that water is not suitable for wudu or for ghusl. Some of the scholars have given some criteria to determine whether the water can still remain pure. I think if I'm not wrong, some of the madhahib, maybe Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Shafi'i, I'm not really sure. They're saying if the water is about 120 gallons, I'm not really sure. If it's as many as, sometimes you can have a huge container and then a drop of salt into it will not change anything in the water. So if it doesn't change the water dramatically, the water is okay for us to use for wudu. I think Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal say, when you shake the container, if the water is able to travel back and forth without any hindrance in the container, then that water is pure. But when you shake the container and then the water cannot travel back and forth because of the impurities in there, is too much, then that water is not suitable for what? For wudu. They said, "Wala ba'sa bit-turab." There is no harm if some dust or sand enters into the water. Wal hamai, or mud enters into the water. Was sabakhati wal ajurri, or even salt enters the water, or plaster. But then the salt should be in a way that is not going to change the water dramatically. So all these things that they are saying, that there is nothing wrong with them, that they shouldn't change the water dramatically. So just to recap this section, if we have water, whether in a container, whether a flowing water or a tap, we should be mindful of the impurities that will enter into the water and that they shouldn't change the water dramatically. That is why it's very, very important in our Sharia that we don't waste water and then we don't destroy water bodies. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Do not urinate in what? In a stream or a river or a lake. Any water that you see that people use, do not put refuse into it. Do not dump any refuse into it." And he said, "Do not waste water, even for ablution." Because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and met one of the Sahaba who was performing wudu. It was like he was using a lot of water. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Is this extravagance?" And the Sahabi were like, "Ya Rasulullah, can there be extravagance in wudu?" He said, "Do not waste water, even if you are by the banks of a flowing river for wudu. Do not waste water." Because water is the source of life. We might take it for granted that here we have always constant, flow of water from our taps. You know very well there are some parts of the world that people will have to look for days before they get water. So let's not take it for granted. Any questions before we move on this particular point of water?
Like the fish, some of the fish, you can see they write on the white face of farm fish.
Fish that, were a fish farming, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Because they will get to the fish and then the fish themselves will give birth and then they will nurture them. There's nothing wrong with that.
Because like some people can say they can feed them with the pig meat.
No, it doesn't matter that they feed them with pig meat. It doesn't matter. The fact that the fish itself originally is halal, it's okay. So for example, in the Sharia, we have some animals that we call jalala, which is back home in Africa, you have stray animals. Animals that are just roaming about anywhere, where they eat from anything and anyhow. The Prophet Muhammad said, if you have such a chicken, or you have such a goat, or such a cow, you hold them and then you keep them for 3 days, so that they ease out all the impurities that they've eaten. They've eaten fresh food before you are able to slaughter them for your own safety. So the fact that the animal goes about eating haram things, it doesn't make it haram for you, because the animal itself is halal for you. And animals do not have any taklif, they don't have any responsibility. The Almighty didn't make things halal or haram for them. So that makes it, halal for us. There are some animals that you can't consume. Because, for example, animals that have carnassial teeth. Those, you can see cats, they have these long teeth. The dogs have it. The lions have it. All these animals that have carnassial teeth, they are haram for you to eat. It is called anyab in Arabic language. It is haram for you to eat. Animals that have claws, that they hunt with. So the eagles and all these animals that hunt, animals that eat blood, they are haram for you. So all these animals that, hunt and all these animals that eat blood, they are haram for you. But all these other animals, especially the herbivores, the animals that eat grass and stuff like that, they are halal for you. And every animal who lives in the sea, totally. Even though we have some amphibians, some crocodiles live in the sea and in the water and then they live on land. But because these crocodiles also eat flesh, they are haram for you. But then there's a unanimous, consensus from the Sahaba that anything, because it's hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so there's no need for any consensus from the Sahaba. Hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says the animals in the sea, if you can go and hunt for a whale, eat. You can hunt for a dolphin, eat, because they are in the sea and then they are halal for you. Okay, some will say, we said animals that eat blood, they are not supposed to eat them. What about sharks that eat, blood? Because they are in the sea, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the animals in the sea are halal for us, they fall within that range. But the animals on land, no. May Almighty Allah safeguard us. Any other question before we move on? Good. So let's go to the next. He says, فصل إذا تعينت النجاسة غسل محلها. If the spot where an impurity affects is known, the place is washed. For example, you have your dress, and then one of the children, they pee on you or they woo on you, and then you're able to know the exact place. Or you're passing by, and then, someone does something, or anything, any impurity, blood, mud, anything that touches your clothes, and then that place is known, then that place is washed. If the place is not known, then the entire garment is washed. If the place where the impurity touches you, your cloth, is known, you only wash the place. Because Aisha radiallahu anha says, sometimes the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his clothes, I see, dried semen. So I just scrape it off with my fingers. So if the place is known, you just wash the place or clean the place. But then the place is not known. You're not sure. I pick the baby and I can smell, urine on me, but I'm not really sure where the urine is. Then you wash what? The whole garment. He said, وَمَنْ شَكَّ فِي إِصَابَةٍ النَّجَاسَةِ. Anybody who is in doubt whether an impurity has affected an area, he must sprinkle water on that area. So this time you are in doubt. Maybe it is this side. Because when I held the child and I gave it back to the mother, and the mother said, oh, his diapers were all soaked up. Or his diapers were all soaked up. And then I was like, no, I held it on my right side, or I held the baby on my left side, but I'm not really sure. But so long as I know I held it on the right side, but I'm not really sure if there's anything there, I sprinkle water there. So the first thing is, if the place of the najasa or the impurity is clear, it is known, you just wash it. You can see it, you wash it. But then if you are not sure of it, you wash the whole garment. But then if you are in doubt of where the najasa has touched you because you held the child and then you are being made aware that no, that's a part of the body, then you rinse the place. وَإِنْ أَصَابَهُ شَيْءٌ شَكَّ فِي نَجَاسَتِهِ فَلَا نَضَحَ عَلَيْهِ. He said, if one is affected by something that he is unsure whether or not it is an impurity, he does not have to sprinkle water. Let me explain this. For the third one, I said, you pick up a child, and then the mother said, oh no, the diapers were all soaked up. You know it is what? An impurity. Then you sprinkle water on it. But then if what touches you are not sure whether it is an impure thing or not, then you don't need to what? You don't need to sprinkle any water on that. So let's repeat 4 things. The first one is you are sure that a najasa has touched you, and then you know the exact place, you just wash it. Second place, najasa has touched you, you know it, but then you don't know which part of your body, you are not sure, you wash the whole cloth. The third one is you pick up a child that normally there is going to be najasa, but you are a little bit in doubt that where did he touch? Is it here? You sprinkle there. But then you pick up, and then you are not the thing is not a najasa. You pick up the baby, and then the baby doesn't have any diapers, dripping or stuff like that. And then you return the baby back to the mother, and you are like, is there any najasa? No, but the baby is okay. The diapers are fine. Then there's no need for you to sprinkle any water there. He said, وَمَنْ تَذَكَّرَ النَّجَاسَةَ وَهُوَ فِي الصَّلَاةِ قَطَعَ إِلَّا أَنْ يَخَافَ خُرُوجَ الْوَقْتِ. He said, if anybody remembers an impurity during a prayer, so for example, you pick up the baby that has the wet, diaper, and then you go and then you perform your wudu, you enter into salah, and then you remember that no, I pick up that baby who had all these soaking, diapers, and I didn't clean myself, I didn't clean the place, then the person must cut off the salah. In this instance, it is not your wudu that has been invalidated. Because, just a reminder, for salah to be accepted, there are 3 places or 3 things that you must make sure they are what? They are up to standard. The first one is your body, this body. The second one is your clothing. And the third one is what? Is the place where you are going to pray. These 3 things, or these 3, that we've mentioned, you must make sure that these three are clean and up to standard. So sometimes you are come to a place whereby you want to pray. For example, maybe here in the masjid, the kids are coming here and a kid has done something that you don't know. So you go to sujood and then you hear something, you feel something which is not okay. Then it means that place is not it's not suitable for salah. Or your clothes, or your body. When I mean your body, I don't mean not bathing the regular bath, but then we mean bathing what the spiritual bath from janaba or from haid or from nifas. I hope we get it. Any question before we continue? Cut off the salah unless you fear losing the prayer time. So you remember in your salah that no, there's a child that you held, there's an impurity, and then you took, and then you smell that no, there's urine on you. You need to cut off the salah, go and wipe off or wash off, and then come back, and then you begin your salah all over. But then if you are scared that the time of the salah will be over, by the time you go back home, go and if you have to wash the clothes, change, then you pray like that because you have what? You have a condition. And then he goes on further. He says, وَمَنْ صَلَّى بِهَا نَاسِيًا وَتَذَكَّرَ بَعْدَ السَّلَامِ أَعَادَ فِي الْوَقْتِ. Whoever prays with an impurity on the body, in the salah, forgetfully, he forgets, and then he prays in what? In that, state, and then he remembers after he finishes the salah, then he what? He must make up the salah, repeats the prayer if the time is still in. But if the time is over, then the time is already over. And there's nothing you can do about it. So in today's session, we looked at the two forms of tahara, which is taharatul khabath and taharatul hadath. That is tahara from, what comes from our body. So menstrual cycle, postpartum bleeding, conjugal relations with your husbands, and then, using the washroom for defecating or urine. These 5 things will necessitate what? Purification. And then we have taharatun habath, that is tahara of, filth, things that will come outside your body to affect you. There is a need for you to also what? To wash or to have purification for that. And that these 2 forms of tahara is not going to be achieved unless we use a pure and then a purifying water. And the pure and purifying water, we said, must have 3 criteria. The taste, the smell, and the color should all be natural, devoid of interference of any human activity. And then we know there are things that will enter into the water to cause it to change dramatically, like oil, like fat, like grease, like soap, like filth and stuff. But there are some things that even if they enter the water, they don't change anything in the water. Example, dirt and mud will not change the water. But then sometimes some of these things can enter into the water, like salt or sugar. If they do not change the water dramatically, then there's nothing wrong in the water. And then we spoke about najasa on the body. If we know the exact portion of the najasa, we wash it. But if we don't know, it's spread. The najasa is spread. It's not at one place. We need to what? We need to wash the whole body. And then if one is in doubt whether an impurity has affected an area, that person must sprinkle water on that area. But if there is no doubt concerning whether it is an impurity or not, if whether it is an impurity, then there is no need to sprinkle water there. So al-muhim, the most important thing in this class today is we're looking at najasa. And we're looking at purification. First, we've started with what? The clothes. So we wash our clothes. Someone might ask a question that in Islam, it says that the garment of the woman should flow on the floor. So what if her garment passes into impurities? Because it's been raining these days, you pass through mud. There's nothing wrong with your clothing for you women. It will pass into the mud. It will pass into dirt. The moment it is dry, it is okay for you to pray in it. It is as men that we are ordered to let our garments go up above our ankles. But for the sisters, your hijab must sweep. You must help the city of Philadelphia in sweeping the streets. Yes, that is your garment in the Sharia. It's very, very important. And that is our culture as Muslims. And it is something that we need to imbibe in ourselves, inshallah. So the next point, we'll look at wudu, inshallah. We'll look at wudu and its, obligation parts, and then its, sunnah parts, and then we'll look at nawaqid al-wudu, that is, the nullifiers of wudu. What are the things that will nullify our wudu? I remember the last time, some months ago, we looked at that, but no problem, we'll still look at it again because it is a form of ibadah, and then there's a constant need for reminder on such issues, inshallah. And you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question when you change it for a baby a diaper,
Mm-hmm.
like you went to the bathroom,
No.
and then your hand touches,
No,
or you already make it.
no.
Do you just have to wash your hand after that, or you have to?
Changing the diapers for babies and then inadvertently touching their private parts doesn't nullify your wudu.
No, not their private, like they make.
You touch the feces,
Yeah.
it doesn't nullify your wudu. You just have to wash your hands. Same way in the class we said when it touches your clothes, you wash the place. You don't redo your wudu. So even if it touches your dress and then you are in salah, when we say cut the salah, it means go and prepare your place and clean it, but not repeat your wudu. So the najasa that comes outside you to touch your clothing, it doesn't affect your wudu. It only affects affects the garment. If najasa touches the carpet, it doesn't affect your wudu. It affects only the carpet, and the carpet must be clean. If it affects your dress, it's only your dress. So the outside, filth that comes to touch you doesn't affect your wudu. It's not part of nawaqid al-wudu. It's not part of the things that invalidate wudu. What invalidates wudu is the actions that you will do. And inshallah we'll come and see that. The actions that we do to invalidate our wudu. Some people say when you vomit, does it invalidate your wudu? When you have nose bleeding, does it invalidate your wudu? We'll answer all those questions, in the subsequent class. But then anything that comes outside your body to touch you, it doesn't invalidate your wudu. So for example, if I pick the baby up, if wee on me, there's nothing wrong. I just go into the office, take off this jalba, put on another one, and then we pray, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because the actions are outside. The things that will invalidate your wudu are things that you do yourself, not something that comes from outside. Another question? Now.
So, I learned something about like babies that are breastfed, the difference between a girl and a boy. So it doesn't matter if they're like toddlers and a boy and a girl, it's still the same ruling that you have to watch.
I want to remember a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam concerning, handling babies, where when a male child, urinates, they sprinkle, but when a female child urinates, they wash. So that's the difference. I don't know the science behind it, but it's just the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how he taught us that. And some of the scholars are trying to explain that because they always bring the male kids to the masjid all the time. So if you have to be washing all the time, then it becomes problematic. But the girls, they don't normally bring them to the masjid, and most often than not. So that's what some of the scholars, the reason they gave. And some people say scientifically, the metabolism in female babies is higher than the ones in the male babies. So the urine of the female babies are a little bit, stronger than that of the males. You are mothers. You can tell us this better, that whether scientifically that has been proven or not. But we have the hadith like that, and we take it whether science approves of it or not. For us, it's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we make use of that. Okay, there's a question. If that is the case, does it mean that if I don't wash for the female child, my salah is invalidated? So long as you are able to what? To clear off the najasa, then that's it. So long as whatever you do is able to clear off. For example, what if sprinkle for the male child does not what? Take away what? The impurity. Will we still maintain what? The sprinkling? No, we'll have to wash it. So it's all part of the adab and the etiquettes of the deen that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching us. So whatever you need to do to clear away the impurity, you need to do it. You need to do it. If it needs, adding soap, detergent to wash the place, just do it. But if there's no need for you to use soap, just regular water is going to, clear it off, then there's no problem, inshallah. Another question? No question. Jazakumullah khairan. And inshallah, then we'll see you next week, because I don't want to jump into the issues of wudu and then we'll stop halfway. No, I want us to have one whole class on wudu, how to do wudu, the compulsory parts of wudu, and then if you forget a part in wudu, how are you going to do, what is going to happen, and all those stuff. And then we'll look at, if there's time, we'll look at the nullifiers of wudu and stuff like that, inshallah. So سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليكم.
I have one question.
Okay.
In this 10 days, my fingernail, I'm not the one who
The fingernail itself got
it.
cut off by itself.
Got by itself, but
No.
it was hanged.
No.
Then I trip it before I remember. I said, oh, I'm fasting.
No, taking off your fingernail doesn't break your fast.
No, like because
In the 10 days, yes.
Yeah, for the
Because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that anybody who has the intention to do udhiyah should not, shave their hair or shave their parts, and then they should not take off their nails. So, for example, maybe something just happened forgetfully, there's nothing wrong with that. You forgot. Or knowingly, there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, I'm not the one who caught it, just hang it.
Yes. Since it's hanging, just take it off. There's no problem. And if you have the means to slaughter the animals on your own, you can do it. It is not the preserve for the males that only the males can slaughter. Because the wives of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they used to slaughter their own animals. So if you can do it, there's nothing wrong, because it is a form of ibadah. And there is no, this ibadah is not specifically for males. It's for both males and females, and we all need to get to Jannah. So there's nothing wrong with that. If you forget, no problem. And forgetfulness is one of the ways that the Almighty Allah makes it easy on us. Because if we do not forget, it's going to be tough to live. Because sometimes some people do things to you, and then if you don't forget, it's always in there. Your blood pressure goes up. It is not right. Or sometimes, some memories are not, pleasant. You forget them. Or even in ibadah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Almighty Allah forgives those who forget. So if you forget something, the Almighty Allah doesn't hold you accountable, because we are human beings. And that's just part of the deen. And may Almighty Allah safeguard us. Khairan, inshallah. And I think off camera.